You've come to the right place. If you're a course creator looking to build more impact, income, and freedom, LMScast is the #1 podcast for course creators just like you. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of the most powerful tool for building, selling, and protecting engaging online courses called Liftor LMS. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMScast. I'm joined by a very special guest, Kurt von Ahnen. He's from MananaNomas.com. Kurt's a Liftor LMS user, and he's also had a really cool experience by using it in quite different applications. One in the corporate world and under some brands that you'll recognize, and then also for his own projects. And now he's been through a bunch of evolution as an e-learning professional that we'll get into his story. But first, Kurt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, man. I'm thrilled that we got this time to set aside and do this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Our paths have crossed over the years, in the Liftor LMS Office Hours Mastermind and emails and just seeing you around and whatnot. It's always great to connect with the community, which is something, of course, we're big at over at Liftor LMS. But tell us about corporate e-learning. What were you doing with Liftor? And what is how did you use training in the corporate space, and who are these companies?
Yeah, it's interesting because I listen to your podcast frequently, and I join the mastermind that you host, and I'm always intimidated because I'm not super technical. Like, I'm a great user and I'm good at the strategy of implementing the use of the product, but like when I watch some of the other guys that jump on, Jonathan and the other guys, they have a much firmer grasp of the coding and stuff. So,
well, a lot of people don't know. I just want to add, I don't know how to write a single line of code, but I have a software company. So it's not always knowing the tech super well isn't always the thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was, I was running an agency in New Mexico, and I was doing a lot of startups and helping a lot of people establish their brands out of Albuquerque, and it was going really good.
So you had a marketing agency?
Yeah. I was doing a lot of web stuff, social media stuff, and really pushing that stuff out. We started it at the height of the recession, and we didn't end up homeless, so I consider that a win. And but I had been in the car business for a really long time on the service side of the industry. And when the economy crashed, it didn't make a lot of sense to stand there for 14 hours and make $30, right? So yeah. I wanted to figure out a way to reinvent myself. And so I wrote and published a book on service writing, and it did pretty well. It's a real easy read. And then I was doing this agency stuff. And then through all that, that's how I made contact with Ducati. Ducati read the book. They thought the book was good and got in touch with me and asked me to write them a course on service writing and service managing that they could host as Ducati to their 166 dealers that were in Canada, United States, and Mexico.
For people who don't know, what is service writing and what is this expertise?
So service writing in its most basic form is a really easy job, but in practice, it's one of the most difficult that a car dealership or power sports dealer has. And that is, like, when you have a car and your car breaks. So let's say you just need an oil change, a tire rotation, your check engine lights on, whatever. You go to the dealership, and the guy that you talk to, the guy that you hand your keys to and get the work done, that's called a service writer. Okay. And then typically there's multiple service writers in a dealership, and then there's a manager over them that kind of just makes sure that what they're writing and what they're promising for the day is actually going to get through the shop with the technicians. Yeah. And then it becomes ballet on the back end. It becomes like having the right parts, charging the right labor amounts, just getting things warranted and charged through the manufacturer, things that might be customer pay. And then it turns into like I said, a ballet. There's a lot of stuff in the background, and that's where my expertise comes in. I show those places how to be the most efficient at getting the work in and out. And then I also teach them how to deal with people and, personality traits, communication styles, and how to sell the most without driving customers away. And if that all works, then we reduce turnover in the shop, meaning technicians don't keep looking for better shops to work in because this just became the best shop to work in. And so that's kind of my thing.
I love niches because, we all think we understand something. Like, oh yeah, I take my car into the shop and somebody write some stuff down, and then I come back and it's ready, or maybe they call me and they find something else. But it's actually, like you said, I'm sure a complicated ballet of managing expectations. We need time to diagnose. The person that does the work might find something. The person who does the work, you want to keep them happy, so they keep working there, becoming a better and better mechanic.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes into it.
There's a
More
lot.
than we think.
Yeah.
More than we think.
Well, and if you think back to, like, you and I are hopefully close to the same age group. I think I'm a little older than you.
I'm 41.
Oh, well, then I'm a lot older than you. I'm 52.
Okay.
So I think back to, our youth and how they would, guidance instructors, guidance counselors would look at someone in high school and go, well, you're probably not going to go to college. You might want to be a mechanic, and there's this stereotype that's like, if you're a mechanic because you weren't smart enough to be a lawyer, right? And that's nowadays, that's just not the case. I mean, these guys got to go to training. You wouldn't believe how much training a motorcycle technician has to take to be able to work on a Ducati, a BMW, a Kawasaki, and a Yamaha.
One of my
they're like brain surgeons.
One of my good friends in Alaska is a helicopter mechanic. He's highly trained. He helped me convert my diesel truck to run off of used vegetable oil. I actually drove around for a long time off of grease. It's called a grease car or whatever.
Yeah, biodiesel.
This was actually straight. It's called SVO, straight vegetable oil. It wasn't even mixing, but it had this whole like thing where it heats up and everything. But I just, as a mechanic, the guy was like, it's like watching Mozart play, just watching him work under the hood, and not even just the helicopter stuff, but just stuff. And he was like teaching me and explaining all these systems. I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on here.
It's a lot. Yeah. And if you think about it, like an automotive mechanic will have a specialty. Like your friend might have been, well, he's a helicopter mechanic, but in most automotive centers, a guy's really good at drivability, right? Which is like how the car burns through fuel. And then other people are suspension specialists, and other people are, electricians or electronic specialists. And in the power sports field, a technician has to do it all. You have to be good at, steering, chassis dynamics, tires, brakes, suspension, internal engine work, transmissions, the whole thing. And so, yeah, when I work with my power sports people, I know that I'm dealing with people that have to be able to transmit a lot of technical information, which usually, if they're really good at that, makes them not so good at interacting with customers. And so that's kind of creating that blend, or teaching them about communication styles, is one of the things that I really employ.
That's cool. So what was it like? Where does the LMS or the education technology come in? If you're working at Ducati and there's all these different dealerships and whatnot, are you traveling a lot? Are you doing like virtual meetings? Are you creating courses or training manuals? What are you doing?
You're asking one of the best questions possible, actually. So I don't want to say I'm a forerunner, or that the new mind in training in power sports, because I think that's given myself far too much credit. But they used to actually just travel and do small groups of 10, 12, technicians or service writers, and have these kind of workshops. And they would do them like at hotels, at different schools, anywhere. And in fact, my last year working with Ducati, I traveled over 200 days that year.
Wow.
And for one person to leave a wife and 2 kids at home and just, fly on 120 airplanes for a year, it's not a great use of efficiency or budget. And so what I did with the online learning and how I actually used Moodle at Ducati. That was my first real e-learning experience, right? I jumped in with Moodle because it was open source and ran with that. And then when I went to Suzuki, I kind of upgraded and went to Liftor LMS. But for me, being able to take core material, like kind of best practices material, and put it online, it at least gets the audience, from here to here, right? I need to get the average intellect or knowledge of the subject matter. I need to raise that level so that everybody's on a certain plane when they show up to class.
Baseline.
And if I can get everyone to that baseline, then when I do host the workshop, it's not such a struggle to get to here, right? Now, if everyone's already here, it's just that next jump.
So it's kind of like blended learning. It's not an either or. You're like, let's get everybody on the same page, and then we do the in-person stuff.
Yeah, and the in-person stuff is so important. Like I keep trying to find ways to substitute some of that, like these Zoom things that you do with the masterminds and stuff. It's great. I can get right now I'm hosting technicians on Zoom calls. I'll get 10 or 12 different people on, and we'll discuss things, and it's good to have that interactivity with the users, but it's still not hands-on. So I still think that there's a need to every now and then, have that mastermind real get together group where you get face to face and you do workshops and you overcome objections in person and stuff. And there's a lot to it, but I'm doing more and more online. The more I can reduce the travel and reduce that travel budget, the more I can expand what we've got. And once I record it and put it online, that work is done, and I can work on developing the next step rather than regurgitating the same step over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, as a consultant, if you find yourself repeating yourself all the time, that's a perfect opportunity for a course. What was the journey to Lifter LMS, or are we at Suzuki at that point, or how does that happen?
Yeah, well, I actually experimented with Liftor LMS on a Manana Nomas project before going to Suzuki. So Moodle was a great proof of concept for me at Ducati because I was able to run a lot of people through it. But and I don't want to talk bad about product. If people like it, that's great. But it was too much for me. Like the back end was a little confusing, and I wasn't able to play enough with the interface to make it attractive. Yeah. Whereas I knew from my agency work that once I got into a WordPress platform, I could play with graphics and user interfaces and make things more pleasant for the user. So based on my comfort level with WordPress, I started focusing more on WordPress options. And so then I looked at, some of the competitors to Liftor LMS, and then I found Liftor LMS. And, if I'm just going to be honest with you, I think you responded to a question email of mine pretty quickly. And, between you and customer service, and this was going back a few years, right? This was 2015, 2016. Yeah. The idea that there's somebody at the other end of the communication that's there to help me or to point me in the right direction was a big plus. And so I downloaded that and I did the Manana Nomas build, and I was ready to leave Ducati and be independent at that time. But then Suzuki called and made me an offer. And I went to Suzuki and I ended up building some projects for them over the last 3-4 years.
Wow. So what was it more of the same, like service writing training, or?
Yeah, Suzuki was a lot different for me, and it was interesting. And I don't know, maybe you would find this interesting as the application goes, but at Ducati, they sell motorcycles and that's it. And it's a kind of a small team that runs the distributorship here in North America, and it takes care of the 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, and United States. Suzuki was completely different. They had, a power sports branch was motorcycles, and it did off-road, on-road, and ATVs and all that stuff. So that was cool. And then there's the marine category, which is outboard motors, which is completely different than power sports. And then even though they don't sell cars in America anymore, I was in charge of the publications and training division for the automotive division. So like if there's a new recall or a new service process, we still had to support that. And so instead of working by myself in a little hole at a smaller, like really exclusive, awesome brand like Ducati, I got to work, on a team and manage a team of people. And that was a really good growth experience for me, because then I dealt with, an instructional designer. I had a publications guy. I had to proofread and do a lot of editing, which was, usually I would do the writing and then publishing and then do editing post-event, right? And I know that a lot of small businesses deal with that. You end up making content and realizing you got to fix mistakes later. At Suzuki, it was really cool because we had systems and people and the overhead available to make, a near perfect product before publishing it. So it was a completely different work style for me, and it really helped me grow and learn a lot. So now, having left Suzuki, I've begun to rebrand and redo Manana Nomas again, and that'll be so I can help dealers directly instead of having to filter my content through an OEM distributorship.
That's awesome. Before we get into that, what inside of a corporation, does the LMS sit on the internet, or is that on like a private intranet?
Oh, that's a very big question, Mr. Badgett.
I will
tell you, most of the companies that I have dealt with or that I have done investigations with to try and push my own agenda, they typically will. They don't host it themselves, but they typically pay another company, which seems like an exorbitant fee, to supposedly self-host this content, on their servers, and then they'll link it through their mainframe server that they use for like their, their business stuff, right? So like typically their logistics, accounting, all their sales stuff is in their mainframe. And then typically these companies will have some third-party training company that makes the content and hosts it securely on their internal servers, and then they link everything together.
I see. That makes sense. I was just curious how it works, because a lot of course creators are, kind of doing courses for profit, just selling directly versus using it for internal training in a company. It's like a different use case. So I was just curious how people, like, how it's a little different.
Well, and when you sit in on these IT meetings at these big companies, it's really interesting because a lot of them are having, they're all talking about being agile companies, and they're all talking about, cloud hosting, cloud sharing, and all the stuff that's going on. And then at the end of the day, you're sitting there thinking, I can make you, like, for me as a trainer, I'm thinking, why are you guys paying $400,000 a year to host a website over here when for less than 10 grand a year, we could build and host an amazing learning platform for you that would still be secure, So it's, and when I say secure, I mean like as secure as like any other major company that's been broken into and lost all their contact information, right?
Yeah, there's no such thing as 100% secure.
Yeah. So when I look at it and when I look at the usage, we had spoken, we started to talk about college use and stuff like that. But corporately speaking, I mean, even a big company, there's not as many active users as you think using these platforms month in, month out, month in, month out. I mean, I might have 3,000 users, registered for a product, but based on, the turn of the material and the content and stuff, I might only have a couple hundred active users in a month.
Right.
And so that was one of the real attractive things that brought me to Liftor in the first place. Because a lot of companies had these billing examples based on usage licenses. And when I tried to figure out what my budget was going to be to run, an enterprise platform learning system, it was really hard to go to my bosses and say, okay, well, this is how much money we're going to spend in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. And then, trying to forecast growth and stuff was really difficult.
Yeah, I get that. And if I know what you mean, like if the LMS is charging you based on users and you've got 3,000 users, but only 100 active, it's counterproductive. It just the model doesn't work. Or you're being overcharged for how much you are actually using. And then go ahead.
The obstacle comes up like in automotive, motorcycle, power sports. If there's like a recall that comes out or a technical service bulletin, you go, man, we really got to train the people about this. And you make this new thing and you put it up. Well, then all of a sudden you've got a surge of 3,000 people taking new content over a month or 6 week period, and then that spikes your billing like crazy. And then you're trying to plan these budgets in advance. It was really difficult. Whereas self-hosting on Liftor, I was able to consolidate, the whole idea of billing into something that was manageable.
Yeah. And you limit you have a more concrete, what your expenses are.
Yeah.
So what was the genesis of Manana Nomas? You said you first, like, how did that website start?
When we say, how did it start? That's kind of a funny thing. So Manana Nomas, and I'm not Hispanic or anything like that, but I had an agency in New Mexico. And when I worked with people, I had a company name that was based on my name. So it was Von Ahnen Designs and PR.
Right.
And then I thought to myself, the bigger this grows, someday I might want to sell this thing. And it's hard to sell something that's got your own name on it. And so I started thinking I need to change the name. And then the customers I were helping, and you talked about working with VSBs, very small businesses.
Yeah.
I was working with a lot of those. I mean, I was working with the Economic Development Center in South Valley there in Albuquerque, and they would refer other people to me. And so you would give them tasks. You would say, okay, I'm going to build the framework, in WordPress for you guys to have your first website. But, do you need a logo? And they, oh no, we can do it. Okay, well, do you need this? Oh, we can do it. Well, I need your about me stuff. Or I need your about us, text to put into the site. And then you'd schedule the next meeting, and then I would have all my stuff done, and they wouldn't have anything done. And, this would push on for meeting and meeting and meeting. And then everything was always a rush. Like they would put something off for 3 months and then give you 2 days notice to finish the project. And, I lost my cool one day, and I was, I said, these people never have their act together. If they're not vested in their own success, I can't continue to beat myself to death over this, right? Like Manana Nomas, there's no tomorrow. They got to get this stuff done today. And the guy running the economic development center, Tony, he goes, that would be a really good name for your business. And so we reserved Manana Nomas right then and there. And then when I took the job with Ducati, I knew I should have shut down Manana Nomas, but in deep in my mind, I was like, it's just too good of a name and a story to give up. So I kept it, and it really became more like a travel blog. As I went to Italy and Spain and France and worked with different things in power sports, I thought it would be really cool to develop that. And then I got fat, and that's why you see a lot of the training material that's on Manana Nomas now is about personal development, losing weight, being fit. And it's not about competing in Mr. Universe. It's about being fit enough to finish a workday and not be exhausted.
This is one of the things. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I wanted to interview you, but
Yeah.
you do more than like business, like helping businesses run more efficiently with like service writing and stuff is one thing, but you also have this whole health transformation thing going on.
Yeah.
What was the inciting incident that made you decide, you know what, I'm ready to make a change? Or was there like a moment, or was it more of just like slow crawl out of a bad spot you got yourself into?
I got to be really unhappy working for the Italian brand, not because of the brand itself, but the situation I had allowed myself to get into. I was traveling way too much, and I was working way too hard, and they didn't have the budget at the time to bring in the help that I needed. And I had committed to the dealer network that we were going to do all this awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know enough about the Manana Nomas, mindset, but I have never missed a deadline or gone over budget. And I treat that the same corporately. Like at Suzuki, I didn't miss deadlines or go over budget. At Ducati, I don't do that. And I believe that whatever I commit to, I got to make happen. Yeah. And so my last year at Ducati, I made that commitment. And then I realized, man, I bit off a lot. And I had a corporate credit card and could eat and drink whatever I wanted. And I did. And I got really big. I had a hard time fitting on the airplane once. I was flying from Florida back to California. And so they put you on a little airplane to go from Daytona to Atlanta. And I was like, man, I'm not too comfortable in my seat. This is
right.
And then from Atlanta to California, this horrifically obese woman sat next to me.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle chair and she was on the aisle seat. And her thigh was squishing under the armrest and squishing up against me. And by the time we got to California and she got out of the chair, when I stood up, sweat and perspiration was dripping down the inside of my pant leg, from just being, and right there, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This has to change. And and some people go, oh, well, that's really disgusting, or that's a really horrible story that you just shared. But that was the moment, right? You said, what's the moment?
How long ago was that?
That was near the end of 2016. I think it was like June or July. And then I took the job at Suzuki. I moved down to Southern California, and I tried to break my bicycle back out of the garage, but I was still too fat to ride it. And my wife and I joined a thing called the Transformation Camp. It was like one of those lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks.
Okay.
And so I lost the 20 pounds in 6 weeks. I signed up for another 6 weeks. I signed up for another 6 weeks. I ended up dropping just over 60 pounds. Wow. And then I hit my goal weight. I was like, man, if I get down to, 205 pounds, I'm going to be pretty happy about that. And then, man, I got back into bicycling, and then I was doing road biking and then mountain biking, and I did BMX with my son. I started running Spartan races and warrior dashes. And I was like, I was approaching 50 years old, and I'm like, at 50, I'm doing stuff that I couldn't do when I was 30. Yeah. And I used to race motorcycles semi-professionally. I used to road race and travel around the country. And even with road racing, I wasn't as fit as I am now. Like the mountain biking I was doing the day I broke my collarbone, I was hitting PRs on every trail there was, double rock gardens. I was having a blast. And so, you come out of that with a broken collarbone, you're like, that, no worries. It was still a great day.
That's awesome. I love that. It's so true. Like you can get in better shape as an older person than you were at your quote prime age or whatever. It's totally possible.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty bizarre now. So, and I am one of those gadget people, right? So I've got the computers on the bikes. I've got the heart rate monitor that I wear. And like when I go mountain biking, I literally just play with the heart rate if I'm riding by myself, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to stay at 164 to 168, for this next 3,000 feet of climb. And I'm surrounded by mountains, so I'm able to regulate that. And I've been able to become a pretty decent athlete, in my 50s, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
but it's
that's
fun.
awesome. Well, more power to you. That's really cool. What like on the Manana Nomas side, what is the disciplined mind?
Mm. So it's one of 14 courses that we've got currently. And so some courses are specifically designed for business, like key performance indicators or setting goals, things like that. And that's more business oriented. But the disciplined mind it's part of the content that I have that's for personal development. And so many people, like that transformation camp I told you that I went to, I was the only person in my group that went through the whole thing and then didn't gain the weight back, like that rebound weight gain. And
What did you
so
have that they didn't?
I think I was just so disgusted with myself that I was never going to go backwards again.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes that so. So for me, I looked at how they succeeded in the first place, and it was through community, right? So when they're part of the group for the 6 weeks, everybody's pushing each other for the 6 weeks, and then when the 6 weeks is up, they go home and they're like, I don't feel like running today, or I don't feel like doing 25 burpees in between commercials, right? And
Right.
so I think that that's where some of that gets lost. And then there's people like me. I'm pretty active online. I'm active socially, right? I've got a pretty decent following on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. And so I interacted with a lot of people that were active. And then I started interacting with people at the office at Suzuki that were active with the mountain biking. And again, I think it was the community that helped drive that. So one of the things I like about using Lifter LMS is the social learning aspect. And so my goal is the discipline mind and goal 365 and some of those other courses that I have, like embrace the process is another one, like the discipline mind. It's all about, it's great content, but if I can plug people into the community side of it and they can begin to edify each other and build each other up, not like a Facebook group that can maybe get some trolls in it and stuff, but something that's in the site where I know it's moderated and that, it'll be people building each other up like-minded. I think that that's really going to help. And so the discipline mind is all about that. It's like how to enjoy the fruits of saying no to certain things, or how to enjoy the fruits of saying yes to things you need to say yes to. Like it's great to say no to something good in search of something better. And that's a lot of what the discipline mind is about.
That is cool. Who's the ideal customer for that or learner?
You know, it's twofold for me because to me, fitness and business are intertwined. They're not separate things. And I think that's why I've been kind of confusing people a little bit. And I'm trying to clear that up. To me, it's about physical fitness that leads to fiscal fitness. If I'm too tired at the end of a work day to enjoy my family, or if I'm too tired halfway through a work day to really kill it at the 3 o'clock meeting in the conference room with the vice president, well, then I'm failing. And so I think that people need that push. So, if people are struggling to get through their workday, they're a great candidate. If someone is stuck in the same position for more than 2.5, 3 years at a corporation that has turnover and opportunity, then they're a great candidate. I did that John Maxwell training, and that's the stuff that really fires me up and gets me to push people. And it's about adding value to people. It's about helping them get to the next step or the next stage. And I'm not saying that everyone that becomes a client of Manana Nomas is going to be a CEO someday, but it's about getting people, loving on people enough to help them realize their self-value and that they've been telling themselves no for too long and that the next level is available for them. They just need to pursue it.
I
And then
love
show them
that.
how to build goals one step at a time to get there.
I love that. I know, I mean, there's this saying like you got to niche, you got to focus, but I also believe in living an integrated life. Health, wealth, relationships, they all work
Yeah.
together. And like the
It's
whole work-life balance thing, I mean, I totally get it, and I've had struggles with that. But if you really love your work and your life, and it's kind of integrated together, like who cares? Like they work with each other, and definitely the fitness and the health is like if you want to be a top performer and you're letting that slide, that's a serious handicap. Um,
Yeah, the mountain biking has been really interesting socially and I'll say politically around because people say to me, "Oh, hey, you want to do this on Thursday night?" And I go, "No, I mountain bike on Thursday nights." So they're like, "Can we reschedule that for another time?" And people are like, "You're going to blow me off to go mountain biking?" And I'm like, "Yeah, It's in the schedule. Like that's what I
Yeah.
do. You
Yeah.
know, Saturday morning is road biking. Thursday night is mountain biking, you know, and it becomes part of the schedule. And when I talk to people that say, well, I don't have the time for that, or I don't, it's no, you have the time. What you mean is that you didn't prioritize properly. And so I've been really working with people about how to prioritize their time better so that they can find the balance to do the things they want to do. You know, a lot of times it requires, you know, putting this thing in the glove box or turning off the TV, but you know, we've got an amazing amount of time to get things done. I just don't think people are aware that they have it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a pretty scheduled guy too. Like I have a pretty elaborate morning routine or whatever, and like every morning, first thing I do is a 5K every single day. And sometimes that's walking, sometimes that's running, or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll blow it off and do an hour of on the road on the bicycle or whatever. But it's like non-negotiable. Like even my family knows like I'll be gone. I'm usually gone before they're even awake. So and that's some of my best thinking time. If I didn't have that, and I'm also
Yep.
learning, I'm listening to podcasts and things like this. Maybe you listening right now are exercising. That's a total hack. Like I have
Yeah.
10 years of having this morning routine, like listening to people about business and health and all kinds of stuff that has transformed how I think and how I operate.
Yeah. I went to the bone conducted headphones so that I can still hear the environment. And so,
Oh, that's cool. What is that?
uh, gosh, where do I have them? They're over there. They squeeze your head right over your temple and it pushes the sound through your bones.
So there's
And
nothing
so,
going into your ear cavity?
so there's nothing in my ear cavity. So when I'm road biking or mountain biking, I can still hear other people on the trail or hear cars coming. So I'm still aware of my environment, but I can hear the music of the podcast. And
Nice.
so if I'm drilling myself on a road ride and I need to maintain cadence, I'll listen to Daft Punk. But if I want to learn something, I'll listen to podcasts. And I listen to an awful lot of business podcasts while I'm exercising.
Wow, that's
But
awesome.
you can still hear everything around you. It's pretty cool.
I should get some of those. I've definitely had a few cars sneak up on me, and I'm walking the dogs too, so I'm managing them. And sometimes
Yeah.
either or a runner will come up behind me or something. Um, you mentioned leadership, John C. Maxwell. I remember when I first became a manager because I was good at my job. I realized this is when I lived in Alaska, and I managed a sled dog tour business that you can only get to by helicopter. And all of a sudden, like, there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of intensity with that kind of work. But I went through this whole journey of like, man, I really need to figure out leadership and management. I read John C. Maxwell. I've
Yeah.
probably read 1,000 business books on business, but also leadership and management. Um, what what are some key counterintuitive takeaways you have around leading and managing people? That the person out there, if they're, let's say they're an expert and a good operator at something, but they're trying to become a better manager or leader, or maybe build a team to
Yeah.
help them, what should they key into?
Well, and I think I talk best from personal experience. I can remember when I was young, I was a manager at UPS, loading the outbound trucks. And I can remember when they first made me manager, I was a kid and I was like, you know, oh, I'm going to tell these guys what to do. And I was really good at loading the trucks, right? So, I mean, I held the record in the Willow Grove hub for a long time on how to load trucks. So I'm really into it, right? It's like Tetris, but in real life. And then, you know, all these other people would come in and they didn't have the same, you know, passion or drive to play Tetris in real life. They just wanted to do the 5.5 hours and go home. So, you know, I'm barking orders at them, right? Hey, that box fell off the belt. This is, read that zip code, throw it, build the wall this way. And I'm yelling at people and they're just like, God, this guy's an idiot. I can't wait till this shift is over, you know? And I didn't realize then, you know, how bad I was at managing people, but I wasn't bad at managing. I was managing great, but I wasn't leading anybody. Like nobody wanted to follow me.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, there's a lot of things that John Maxwell says, but one thing that really sticks out to me is, you know, if you find yourself going somewhere and nobody's following you, well, then you're not leading anybody. You know, you're just going for a walk. And so I'm like, okay, so who is following? Like, who am I pouring into? Who am I mentoring? Who am I bringing alongside of me? And that's been a huge transition in how I look at running teams. And so like at Suzuki, I didn't want to just be a guy that sat in a cubicle and kind of babysat 4 other cubicles and told people what to do. I wanted to make sure I became a working manager and understood, like, hey, how does articulate storyline really work? Or how does this really work? Or how can we work together on this and take this to the next level? And then by empowering other people and adding value to other people, or giving them training in areas that might have been their deficiencies, I was able to build a really solid team. And I think that that's the difference, right? So when you can add value to other people and lead them, and they want to follow you. When I left Suzuki, that was one of the weirdest transitions ever. I actually had 2 employees write recommendations on my LinkedIn page. And
Yeah.
I had never seen that before. I had never seen employees writing recommendations for bosses that had left, So I was like, well, I must have done something right. I mean, something about the leadership training I had at John Maxwell, or the training that I give to others, it must have resonated in a way that made enough sense that these employees recognized that was something that I would find value in. So it was kind of touching.
Can you tell us, if somebody has a job in a corporate and they're thinking about moving to operating on their own, like you've made that transition, what do you recommend with that? Like how did that work? And then what are some key takeaways to make it not so scary, or at least set yourself up for success if you're thinking about it?
There is so much at play in that question, Chris. That's not even fair to ask me that. That's a tough one. So I will tell you, when I started Manana Nomas originally, when it was Van Ahnen Designs and PR in New Mexico, that was at the height of the recession. And that was pure bootstrap survival stuff, man. I didn't care if I slept or didn't sleep. I would eat peanut butter and jelly because I couldn't afford to buy something on the road. And, I just wanted something better than beans in a crock pot for my kids,
Right.
That was rough. That was taking any meeting at any time for any benefit. And it was a struggle. And I don't recommend that for anybody. I don't, because that desperation led to really poor leadership on my part. We survived, but I don't know that we really thrived. Right. This time's completely different. I made sure that I understood my niche. I made sure that I understood my customer first. I built a product that's not perfect, but it was good enough to launch and start getting people through it. And now I'm able to do a proof of concept. I've beta tested with a couple of dealers that I've put in, and it was like, hey, I'm going to give you guys a smoking hot deal on this, but here's the flip side. You're going to become a modern day, case study that I'm going to publicize. So I got to make sure you're okay with this. We're going to share your numbers. We're going to share your successes. We're going to share your challenges, but you get access to me and the program, for next to nothing. And, taking the time to set it up that way, I think is what's going to really lend it to success. I also built my network pretty high before I went independent. I have access to about 3,000 motorcycle dealerships now that people know who I am. They know my name. I published a book in 2007 that lends me credibility. So there's all these things. Like, I have a second book that's coming out in a couple of months, and that's called Service Writing in the Gray. And the first book was Service Writing in Black and White. So I'm very focused on that niche. And it's understanding the niche, the customer, building the network, and then having a product to actually sell and push, I think is really important. I don't think people are prepared when they think about owning their own business and leaving a corporate, safety net. They don't really think it all the way through. They don't think about, well, what is the product, and how am I going to distribute the product, and how am I going to get the customer, and who is my customer, and how am I going to approach that customer? Because in a corporate environment, they might see customers coming and going, but they're really not aware of the marketing or the expense that was made to get that customer in the first place. So they really have to have a realistic expectation before they jump in.
That's awesome. Any quick advice on I think writing a book is a great idea, especially if you're in like a niche within a niche within a niche or whatever. Like, how did that go down for you?
I'll be honest. I was in the car business for so long on the service side, and I was really frustrated that I just didn't really, I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I was good at it, but I didn't enjoy it. I worked at a lot. I worked at way too many dealerships because I would get ticked off and go to the next one. Okay. And I couldn't sleep. And finally I wrote the book kind of like, I didn't understand. I didn't know how I could go from one service center to another that was struggling with being profitable, and then making it extremely profitable, and then seeing like a lack of culture shift in other ways. So I wrote a book about it. It's a really short book, but I wrote the book and went that direction. And I was surprised. I didn't think anybody was going to buy it. I self-published it. I didn't even get a real publisher. I self-published it, and I thought, well, if it sells 10 or 15 copies, at least I exercised it, right? I got that demon out of my brain. But then people started buying it, and I think we've sold something like 5,000 copies already.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, but it's so specific, right? So my subject matter is in a real niche. I mean, how many service writers are there, right? I mean, how many people do you know personally that make their living selling oil changes at a Ford dealership? And so that's my audience, and that's who's been buying it. And then manufacturers have bought it, like Ducati bought the book and then distributed it to all their dealerships. Other brands have bought the book and distributed to their dealerships. And it's been really interesting. And, in the book, like I said, I wrote the book out of frustration. So there's a lot of things in there that really aren't super positive. It'll talk about who owns a dealership, right? Usually it's a sales-oriented person. So you can't expect a sales-oriented person to understand the investment it takes to have a really great service department, right? Because for a lot of dealers,
it's a cost center.
Yeah, the service department they look at as a cost center instead of a profit center.
Yeah.
And I see it as the service department is what keeps your business alive after the sale, right? The sale is a little bit. I make this much money selling a motorcycle. I make this much money maintaining that motorcycle for the next 10 years. And so getting dealers to understand that the back end fixed operations is where the real profit structure is, has been a really fun journey.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, to write a book and establish yourself as some kind of expert, I don't think there's a better way to really do it.
Yeah, it's
and
a big business card. It's a big
and when I teach, I give people a copy of the book, and they're like, oh, "I didn't realize you're the guy that wrote this." And it's just
right.
that, you're just laying down more stamps of authority on what you teach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, any just words you have about Lifter LMS, like how it's served you, or just any comments about that software?
And I've hit you with this on email before. So it's fantastic. And I don't tell people anything other than it's fantastic, but you have to prepare yourself, because as simple as it looks, there's a lot of plugins and stuff that you could get. And so like when you sign up for the Universe or the Infinity bundle, and you can take care of how much things cost and put links in the description if you want, but there's different bundles with different packages. And my mistake when I first signed up was I put in all those plugins and I started trying to figure out how I was going to use everything. And that was the wrong direction to take. What I should have done was, get the bundle, but then, only plug in the things that I really saw a need for, and then grow my understanding or my expertise of using it, stair step it, in a way that made sense. And now I've gotten to it's years down the road, and now I'm plugging in things like Groundhog and all kinds of stuff and making the site more interactive for my users. But that's not a requirement up front. A requirement up front is, you've got a course or you've got material you want to share with an audience. Lifter LMS in its base form does that. And then you've got the packages that really help, edify the user and build up a support structure that gets them up to speed relatively quickly. And then they can plug in the other stuff, as they want to improve it or raise the level.
I like that. Yeah. Keep it simple and it evolves. It can grow with you over time.
So amazing. I mean, I've built samples for other companies, and I've used the your free version, right? Your freemium version. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to build you a quick course just so you can see how it would work. And then I tell them, when you're ready to pull the trigger on this project, there's a package we're going to get for you, and it's going to give you access to so many more, interactive points of touch with your users. And I think that when you sell it that way, it makes it easier, because they're visual. They want to see something work. But then, you tell them, hey, this can grow and expand as you grow and expand. And it doesn't cost. I mean, I wrote down some examples in my notes here, but I've got examples from different companies, anywhere from $90,000 to $400,000 a year to run a learning management system. And when I look at those numbers and then compare to what I'm spending with Manana Nomas, well, it's no wonder that I'm in a position to become profitable more quickly, because I haven't expended myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Kurt, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been awesome to catch up and learn more about your story. And I find your story inspiring, and I'm sure the listener does on a lot of levels.
I hope so.
Kurt's at manananomas.com. Any other final words for the people or places to go to connect with you?
Well, the catch line is get it done yesterday, right? So Manana Nomas, get it done yesterday. That's my big thing. Don't sit around. Make yourself deadlines. Give yourself budgets. Don't exceed deadlines. Don't exceed budgets, and focus on the next step or the next level that you can get to. And I'm all about the leadership training and building these LMSs for other people. But my core, my happiness comes when I can help service departments, in the power sports industry expand. And it all seems possible sitting at home doing this with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kurt. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, cool, brother. I like it.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMScast. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I hope you enjoyed the show. This show was brought to you by Liftor LMS, the #1 tool for creating, selling, and protecting engaging online courses to help you get more revenue, freedom, and impact in your life. Head on over to LifterLMS.com and get the best gear for your course creator journey. Let's build the most engaging, results-getting courses on the internet.